Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to introduce our next speaker, Boyd Martin, who's one of the leading riders of today. Boyd was a top-place U.S. rider in the 2014 World Equestrian Games in Normandy, France, and the 2010 World Equestrian Games in Lexington, Kentucky. A two-time Olympian for the U.S. eventing team, Boyd rode the infamous off-track thoroughbred Blackfoot Mystery in the 2016 Olympics. The son of two Winter Olympians, Toy Dorgan and Ross Martin, Boyd grew up in Australia and moved to the U.S. to pursue his dreams of international competition. He and his wife Sylvia currently reside down the road in Pennsylvania, and he is currently ranked 5th in the HSBC World Rankings. Please help me welcome Boyd Martin.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, it's a fantastic honour to speak at an event like this. For many, many years, I've been a huge fan of racing. Growing up in Australia, sports is a huge part of your childhood, and I'll never forget running out to Randwick Racecourse and Rosehill Gardens, and was very passionate about horses. Quick bit about me is, thank you for the introduction, very nice of you. And so my sport basically is a triathlon. It's a 3-day event. You do dressage, which is like the floor routine of a gymnast. The next day is the speed and endurance day. It's the cross country. It's usually about 3 or 4 miles over about 30 fixed obstacles at high speeds. They're water jumps, ditch jumps, bank jumps. And then the final day is the show jumping, the stadium jumping, and obviously the make or break of our event is the cross country. That's the real deciding factor, and there's no better horse in the world to be on that particular day is the thoroughbred. And a lot of my success has come from the cross country day, and the majority of my success has been thanks to off the track, slow, retired racehorses. I don't think there's a bigger event in the world. Once you go to the Olympics, you're called an Olympian, which is wonderful. It is definitely an amazing title, and it's a personal accomplishment, and it's really the pinnacle of the sport. The dream is not just to get to Rio, it's to participate on the US team and contribute to a medal-winning performance. I've already been to the Olympics once before, and I was the first rider out at London. Went first cross-country through Greenwich Park, and I just never forget how many people are just absolutely screaming at you as you're approaching the jump cross-country. It was a remarkable experience, and something I've never experienced before, and something I'll remember forever. Obviously, it's very, very important for us to have equestrian represented at the Olympic Games. It's one of the sports that's been there forever. It's one of the only team sports, well, the only team sport that requires an animal and an athlete. And I think without the Olympics for 3-day eventing or equestrian sports, it really would take the wind out of the whole sporting scene. There's no better feeling in the world than outdoing the European countries. At the moment, I think Germany looks strong, and originally I'm from Australia, so you love beating the English too, but 3-day eventing, cricket or rugby. Righto. Thank you. I think the thoroughbred is absolutely born and bred for eventing. If you think about it, there's a lot of horses coming out of racing and a lot of people interested in performance horses, and I think it's a win-win situation for everyone. I've ridden around some of the biggest courses in the world, jumped some of the biggest fences you can ever believe, and I've got to tell you, looking through a pair of ears of a thoroughbred, there's no better feeling when that horse is locked onto that fence and pulling you down to it. He's keen, I'm keen. It's just a wonderful feeling.
If you get a thoroughbred off the track, a lot of the training's already been done for you. You don't have to worry about gallop or stamina. I can guarantee you every thoroughbred out there is going to do the cross country with their eyes shut. You know, they've been trained to come out of the stall and go as fast as they can and put in 100% energy for the 20 minutes they're getting exercised every day, where we have to then say, look guy, you have to be nice and soft and relaxed. You know, life's not a mere miles an hour anymore, and most thoroughbreds come around to that way of thinking. They're wonderful natured horses, great gallopers, brave, fit, sound. The dressage was the toughest part, trying to get them relaxed and soft after they've had a year or two of galloping flat out. But for a 3-day event horse, I don't think you could beat a real good thoroughbred.
This is the horse is a 2-year-old, I think, the horse that I rode at the Rio Olympics. His name was Blackfoot Mystery. He was bred in Kentucky by that fella in the picture. I think he was a very tall, gangly 2-year-old, and it was pretty obvious from the get-go that he probably wasn't going to win the Kentucky Derby. They tried him, I think, in 4 or 5 races. He came a dismal last in about 4 of them by many lengths. And long story short, he ended up in California trying his luck at sort of Hollywood Park. Was deemed that he wasn't going to be a great racehorse, so he actually, lucky for me, got channeled through one of these thoroughbred aftercare situations. This is long before I ever knew who Blackfoot Mystery was. A rider in California called Kelly Prather picked him up. She automatically spotted his characteristics that would be perfect for our game. He was a big, beautiful animal, nice, big mover, you know, a very grand horse, a very quiet, good thinker, and it had the ability to jump. I'd had a lot of luck over the years with thoroughbreds. My most, you know, back in Australia, a little bit like America, there's, I think in America there's 30,000 thoroughbreds bred every year. In Australia there's about 15,000 thoroughbreds bred every year. So in Australia I really got started in the sport of eventing by picking up a slow racehorse for $1,000, $1,500, putting a bit of time and energy into it, either selling them on as a sport horse or continuing on. My first taste of championship level eventing was through a horse called Neville Bardos, who I bought for $850 and ended up bringing to America here and rode around Rolex and the World Championships, and about 7 or 8 years later, I syndicated him, and I made it, his value was $150,000. And at that time in my life, it was a huge amount of money. And I've still got Neville today. He's retired. But thinking back on old Neville's life, you know, horse slaughter is legal, I think, in Australia. And at that time, you know, the price for a horse going to dog food was somewhere between $900 and $1,000. So you could get yourself a very, very good quality horse for our sport for a very cheap price. And that's basically how I got started. Going back to Big Red, he was an American thoroughbred born in Kentucky. Things had changed for me. I came to this country in 2006, and sort of 10 years later the Olympics was coming up, and I've been watching Blackfoot Mystery for many years. The year before the Olympics I heard that he might be for sale, so I rounded up a group of owners to buy him. So I sort of did a bit of a shortcut. Because he was an American thoroughbred, I actually was able to get a lot of people to buy a share. There were 12 shares in the horse, and a lot of people that owned racehorses only liked the idea of supporting an American thoroughbred, and I got some big thoroughbred owners to chip in to buy Blackfoot Mystery, and it turned into be a great thing because the first event horse they ever owned actually went to the Rio Olympics, so they thought, well, this is easy. You know, and it's you know, Blackfoot Mystery himself is obviously the the best part about him is this cross-country phase. You have to have a very brave, courageous horse, a good galloper, a tough horse, a willing horse, and Big Red, as we call him at home, is absolutely perfect for it. The Olympic team, I was actually the only one on the American Olympic team that had an American-bred horse, and only 2 of us actually managed to finish the Olympic Games. It was a very, very tough course. So after the competition, the first phase, I finished in 7th place out of about 70 horses. So Blackfoot Mystery was still young and inexperienced at Rio. He's a 12-year-old now. So in eventing, they really hit their prime sort of 14, 15 years old. So I actually think the best is still to come for this horse. Definitely at Rio, the cross-country course is unbelievably tough and grueling, and I got to say I've never felt a horse try so hard. It's about a 12-minute course. It was a very tough technical course, and my fella was pretty inexperienced and a typical thoroughbred. He just tried and tried and tried the whole way around, and picked up one of the fastest times of the day. Thinking back on this, going back to, I did a bit of research for this speech, and America breeds 30,000 foals a year, so there's 30,000 racehorses, and according to my Google search, 2 out of every 3 racehorses will be euthanized or sent to slaughter or abandoned. And to me, that's just a horrifying statistic, considering what some of these animals can do after their racing career is finished. Obviously, I'm looking for a very specific type of thoroughbred, but you've got to also imagine all the other horse lovers in the world, be them pleasure riders, kids for pony club, show jumpers. My wife's taken a thoroughbred by Sea Lord to the Grand Prix level at dressage. To me, two-thirds of retired racehorses is too much high of a number to just throw away. There's another picture from Rio that's about the 2nd or 3rd fence on the cross country, still fresh there. And there's Rio, Big Red after the cross country at Rio. So basically, what I'm looking for in a thoroughbred is, the number one thing probably would be its character. For a thoroughbred to change career, it's got to have the mindset of changing job. Now, it's not going to happen straight away. Remember, a thoroughbred's trained at the racetrack as a 2 or 3 year old to go a mere miles a day. They work very hard, and it's all done. And with our sports or changing career, there needs to be a process where you sort of teach them to say, hey, take it easy, champ. Everything doesn't have to go as fast as it can. Movement's fantastic, like for dressage or eventing. If you can have a thoroughbred that's got a nice big open canter or a nice big loose trot, a nice sort of uphill strong thoroughbred, which is more common, I suppose, in the more long distance types thoroughbreds, which I suppose, from what I understand, American racing's very heavily involved in sprinters, as Australia's gone now. So sometimes, we're looking for the one that is a bit too tall and gangly and big boned to be a good sprinter. And it's been really cool sort of meeting people along the way. This is John O'Meara, a guy in Kentucky that actually bred Blackfoot Mystery, and he's an Irish fella, and I got to meet him last year just before the Olympics, and he said he remembers the horse well, and that fella there all of a sudden had a reason. He followed the horse through the Olympics. He came and met me again, and being a breeder of a thoroughbred, I can't tell you how pleased and happy and thankful he was that horse made it to one of these aftercare systems and then somehow found its way into my barn and then did all he can did. And, this particular horse definitely could have been like one of the 2/3, and maybe it was by luck or by chance, or luckily he had a person that put him in one of these programs that then he got developed, and you know, he wasn't greatly suited to racing, but he was absolutely perfect for a slightly different career, which is our you know, our sport, which is 3-day eventing. So, you know, over the years, our sport's changed a little bit, where the dressage and show jumping's becoming a little bit more important, and we're seeing a lot of crosses with thoroughbreds. You know, in my opinion, you wouldn't want any less than 70% thoroughbred in the breeding, and then so you're sort of crossing European sport horses, warm bloods, Irish sport horses and whatnot across a thoroughbred mare. So, you know, in America especially, and I know especially as well in Australia, there are some unbelievably well-suited, well-bred thoroughbreds that could definitely play a huge factor into making this country one of the strongest countries in the world. If you think we're up against all these other, you know, it's a global sport now, 3-day eventing, and you know, I do believe that we do have some of the best thoroughbreds sitting in our backyard, and we've got to figure out a way that they can get redirected, because they, you know, that they could be the ultimate in a slightly different discipline.